The asterisk Oblivion's claw asterisk hung in the vast, endless void of space, its gargantuan form a shadow against the scattered starlight. The ship was a masterpiece of intimidation, a colossal predator stretching over 3 miles long, its jagged structure bristling with weaponry and jagged spines that shimmered faintly with an eerie, cold light. It exuded power like a slumbering beast waiting to pounce. Its hull, dark and metallic, seemed to absorb the light around it, making it appear even larger, more menacing, as though it were a piece of the void itself. Inside the bridge, the air was tense but orderly, the quiet hum of machinery blending with the soft chimes of crystalline panels. Admiral Krelix stood at the center, a towering figure of reptilian dominance. His silver scales reflected the dim glow of the bridge's lights, giving him an almost ethereal, otherworldly presence. His long, clawed hands rested behind his back as he surveyed the stars through the massive viewport in front of him. Every movement he made was deliberate, his posture exuding the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. His piercing amber eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the darkness of space with a predator's focus, searching for anything that might dare challenge the Zarian dominion. Around him, his crew moved with mechanical precision. The Hivekin officers, insectoid beings with glistening black exoskeletons, clicked and buzzed softly as they worked at their stations, their multi-jointed arms moving with unnerving fluidity. Their compound eyes reflected the light of their consoles, flickering like tiny alien mirrors. Beside them, the Nexarans, crystalline beings whose bodies sparkled faintly with inner light, moved with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. Their chiming voices, soft and harmonious, occasionally broke the silence as they communicated in their strange musical language. Together, the Hivekin and Nexarans formed a perfect blend of efficiency and cold, detached loyalty, a crew engineered for conquest. For 2 millennia, the Zarian Dominion had been an unstoppable force, sweeping through the galaxy like a storm. They had crushed every species they encountered, leaving nothing but submission or destruction in their wake. Their empire now spanned 900 star systems, each one a testament to their brutal philosophy. The strong rule and the weak are either enslaved or eradicated. To the Zarian Dominion there was no middle ground. Strength was everything, and mercy was a weakness they could not afford. Admiral came the buzzing voice of Commander Trixel, one of the Hivekin officers. His antennae twitched as he turned to face Krelix, his mandibles clicking softly. Long-range sensors have detected a vessel at the edge of the sector. Human origin. Small, unarmed. Shall we obliterate it for sport? The suggestion hung in the air like a dark promise, and a ripple of amusement passed through the bridge. The crew had seen this scenario play out countless times before, some primitive species venturing too far from their homeworld, unaware of the predators lurking in the shadows of the galaxy. It was always the same. They would panic, beg, and ultimately be destroyed. To the Zarian, it was less a battle and more a form of entertainment. Krelix's lips curled into a smirk, revealing rows of sharp, polished teeth. His forked tongue flicked out briefly, tasting the air as if savoring the moment. "No, Commander," he said, his voice smooth and cold, carrying the weight of authority. "Let's not be hasty. Let's see what these primitives do when they realize they're staring at the might of the Zarian Dominion." There was a cruel satisfaction in his tone, a predator's delight in toying with its prey. The crew chuckled softly, their voices a mix of chimes and clicks. They had no doubt about the outcome. To them, the humans were nothing more than a pathetic curiosity, another weak species to be added to their long list of conquests. The image of the human vessel appeared on the main screen, projected in stark detail. It was small, barely a speck compared to the asterisk Oblivion's claw asterisk. Its design was simple, functional, with no visible weapons or advanced technology. Painted in white and blue, it seemed almost laughably fragile, like a child's toy drifting aimlessly in the void. Strange symbols adorned its hull, human writing, no doubt, but to the Zarian crew it was meaningless. Krelix stared at the vessel with a mixture of disdain and amusement. How quaint, he murmured, his amber eyes narrowing. A species so primitive they still send out exploration ships. Do they think the galaxy is a place for discovery? Fools, they'll learn soon enough that it belongs to those strong enough to take it. The Hivekin officers exchanged knowing glances, their mandibles clicking in amusement. The Nexarans, ever graceful, simply watched in silence, their crystalline bodies shimmering faintly as they awaited their admiral's next command. The atmosphere on the bridge was one of casual superiority, as if the outcome of this encounter had already been decided. "Prepare to make contact," Krelix ordered, his voice cutting through the quiet hum of the bridge. "Let's introduce ourselves to our new pets." The crew moved swiftly, their movements synchronized and efficient. Lights flickered across the consoles as the communication systems came online, and a low hum filled the air. Krelix leaned forward slightly, his sharp eyes fixed on the tiny vessel. He could already imagine the fear in their voices, the desperation in their pleas. It was a game he had played many times before, and it never failed to amuse him. As the Zarian Dominion prepared to make contact, the asterisk Oblivion's claw loomed over the human ship like a shadow of death. Its massive form a stark reminder of the power and arrogance of an empire that had never known defeat. But in the silent void of space, something unseen stirred, a quiet defiance, a hidden strength that the Zarian could not yet comprehend. The humans were not what they seemed, and the mighty Zarian Dominion was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. The asterisk Pioneer drifted quietly in the vast emptiness of space, a small, unassuming vessel painted in white and blue. Its smooth, simple design gave it the appearance of a fragile bird lost in the void, dwarfed by the monstrous presence of the Zarian flagship, Oblivion's Claw Asterisk. From a distance, it seemed harmless, a mere speck of dust against the unstoppable force of the Zarian Dominion. There were no visible weapons, no signs of advanced technology, nothing to suggest it could pose even the slightest threat. It was the kind of ship the Zarian had seen and destroyed countless times before, weak, insignificant, and utterly beneath their notice. Inside the Pioneer's bridge, Captain Elias Ward stood at the center, his tall frame steady and calm. His sharp blue eyes gazed at the massive Zarian fleet on the screen before him, their dark, jagged ships forming an ominous wall of power. There was no fear in his expression, no hesitation in his posture. His face was a mask of quiet confidence, his presence commanding yet strangely serene. Around him, his crew worked in silence, their movements deliberate and precise. The air on the bridge was heavy but not with panic. It was focused, calculated, like the stillness before a storm. The Zarian hail came through, a cold, crackling voice that echoed across the bridge. The crew paused, their eyes flickering toward their captain. Ward gave a slight nod, his calm demeanor unshaken, and the communication was opened. The screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Admiral Krelix, his silver scales gleaming under the dim light of his bridge. His piercing amber eyes locked onto Ward with the intensity of a predator sizing up its prey. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the United Earth vessel Asterisk Pioneer Asterisk," Ward said, his voice steady and clear. There was no tremor, no sign of submission. "We come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact." For a moment there was silence. Then laughter erupted from the Zarian crew, a cacophony of clicking, buzzing, and chiming that filled the asterisk Oblivion's Claw Asterisk. The Hivekin officers leaned back in their seats, their mandibles clicking with amusement, while the crystalline Nexarans exchanged shimmering glances, their bodies flickering with faint light. To them, Ward's words were absurd, almost comical. Peace from a species so clearly outmatched, it was a concept so alien to the Zarian that they could only respond with mockery. Admiral Krelix leaned forward, his sharp teeth bared in a cruel smile. "Peace," he repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. "You misunderstand your position, human. You have one choice: surrender or be destroyed." His words hung in the air like a death sentence, the weight of his authority pressing down on the pioneer's bridge. Yet Ward remained unmoved. His expression didn't falter, his calm blue eyes meeting Krelix's piercing gaze without fear. There was something in his demeanor, something quiet and unshakable, that made the laughter on the Zarian bridge falter just for a moment. "We respectfully decline," Ward said evenly, his tone unwavering. "However, we request 24 hours to prepare." The words were simple, spoken without arrogance or desperation, yet they carried an unexpected weight. The Zarian crew fell silent, their amusement replaced by a flicker of confusion. This was not the response they had expected. Most species, when faced with the might of the Zarian dominion, begged for mercy or scrambled to surrender. But this human captain, he didn't plead, he didn't panic. He simply stood there, calm and composed, as if he were the one in control. Admiral Krelix narrowed his eyes, his forked tongue flicking out briefly. There was something unsettling about Ward, something he couldn't quite place. The human's calmness felt unnatural, almost defiant, and it stirred a faint unease in the back of Krelix's mind. But he quickly dismissed it. The humans were weak, their ship was a joke, and their captain's composure was nothing more than a facade. They were no different from the countless other species the Zarian had crushed. "Very well," Krelix said, his voice laced with mockery. "Use your time wisely, little creature. It will be your last." The communication cut off and the screen went dark. On the Oblivion's claw the crew resumed their work, their laughter fading into the background hum of the ship. To them, the encounter was already over. The humans would use their 24 hours to prepare for a futile resistance, and then they would be annihilated. It was the same story they had seen play out countless times before. But Krelix couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. As he stared at the darkened screen, his amber eyes narrowed in thought. The human captain's calmness, his refusal to beg or panic, it was unusual. Most species broke under the weight of the Zarian's power, their fear palpable even across the void of space. But Ward had been calm, almost unnervingly so. It wasn't the calmness of someone resigned to their fate. It was the calmness of someone who knew something Krelix didn't. On the Pioneer's bridge, the atmosphere was quiet but charged with purpose. Ward turned to his crew, his calm demeanor unchanged. "You all know what to do," he said, his voice steady. "Let's make the most of our time." The crew nodded, their faces set with determination. There was no fear, no hesitation. They moved with the precision of a team that had trained for this moment, their every action deliberate and calculated. The Pioneer may have looked like an unarmed exploration vessel, but appearances could be deceiving. Beneath its simple exterior lay secrets the Zarian could not begin to imagine. As the Zarian fleet loomed in the distance, their ships casting long shadows over the Pioneer, the humans worked in silence, their resolve unshaken. They were not afraid. They had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it, and now the time had come. On the Oblivion's claw Krelix watched the small human ship with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. To him, it was nothing more than a speck of dust, a minor distraction in the grand expanse of the Zarian dominion. But in the quiet corners of his mind, a faint unease lingered, a whisper of doubt that he could not silence. And as the Pioneer drifted silently in the void, its unassuming form belying the storm that was about to unfold, the humans prepared to show the Zarian dominion what it truly meant to face the unknown. The Pioneer floated silently in the void, dwarfed by the massive Zarian fleet that surrounded it. The alien warships loomed like an iron cage, their jagged forms casting long, menacing shadows over the human vessel. To the Zarian, it was the image of absolute dominance, a predator encircling its prey, toying with it before the inevitable kill. Inside the Oblivion's claw the Zarian crew watched with smug amusement as the humans appeared to spend their final hours in quiet resignation. On the Pioneer's bridge, the atmosphere was heavy with an almost tangible weight. The glow of the consoles illuminated the faces of the crew, their expressions somber and reflective. One officer wiped a tear from her cheek as she recorded a message to her family, her voice trembling but steady. Another sat silently at his station, staring at a small photograph of his children, his fingers brushing the edges as if committing every detail to memory. Across the ship, similar scenes unfolded, moments of raw humanity in the face of what seemed to be certain doom. The Zarian monitors captured it all. On the Oblivion's claw the crew sneered and laughed, their voices filled with derision. "Look at them," one Hivekin officer buzzed, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "Sending messages to their families as if it will matter. Do they think their words will reach anyone after we've turned their planet to ash?" Admiral Krellick stood at the center of the bridge, his arms crossed over his chest. His amber eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction as he watched the humans' apparent despair. "Pathetic," he muttered, his forked tongue flicking out briefly. "They cling to hope like insects clinging to a dying leaf. Let them have their final moments. It changes nothing." But aboard the Pioneer, the truth was far from what the Zarian believed. Beneath the surface of quiet resignation, there was a storm of activity hidden behind the carefully constructed facade. The crew moved with precision and purpose, their every action deliberate. The messages to their families, the somber meetings, the diagnostics, everything was part of the act. A calculated performance designed to lull the Zarian into a false sense of superiority. Deep within the ship's hull, concealed compartments began to open, revealing weapons that no exploration vessel should possess. Sleek, black cannons hummed to life, their surfaces rippling with faint blue energy. Stealth systems, dormant until now, activated with a soft, almost imperceptible hum, cloaking the Pioneer in a shroud of invisibility that even the Zarian's advanced sensors couldn't penetrate. The ship's unassuming exterior was a lie, a mask hiding the deadly predator beneath. The crew of the Pioneer were no ordinary explorers. Each member was an elite operative handpicked for this mission. They moved with the calm efficiency of seasoned soldiers, their faces betraying no fear as they prepared for what was to come. Captain Elias Ward stood at the center of it all, his sharp blue eyes scanning the room. His voice, low and steady, carried an unshakable authority that filled his crew with quiet confidence. "Status report," he said, his tone calm but firm. "All systems are online," replied his first officer, a woman with steel-gray eyes and a voice as sharp as a blade. "Weapons are primed, stealth systems are active. The Zarian have no idea what's coming." Ward nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Good, let's keep it that way." Meanwhile, far beyond the Zarian fleet, in the outer reach on the Pioneer, the final preparations were underway. The crew moved with quiet determination, their faces set with resolve. They knew the odds, knew the risks, but they also knew their purpose. This was not a mission of survival. It was a mission of defiance, a statement to the galaxy that humanity would not bow, would not break, no matter the cost. As the Zarian fleet closed in, their ships forming an impenetrable wall of power, the Pioneer remained still, its unassuming form a stark contrast to the chaos it was about to unleash. And in the darkness beyond, the hidden human fleets waited, their weapons primed, their engines silent like wolves circling their prey. The calm before the storm stretched on, heavy and oppressive, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. And in that silence, a single truth became clear. The Zarian Dominion had underestimated humanity, and they were about to pay the price. The void of space seemed to hold its breath as the final moments of the 24-hour deadline ticked away. The Pioneer once an unassuming speck amidst the monstrous Zarian fleet, floated in eerie stillness. The Zarian ships encircled it like vultures around a dying animal, their jagged hulls glinting faintly in the light of a distant star. On the Oblivion's claw Admiral Krellick leaned forward in his command chair, his amber eyes fixed on the human vessel. The humans had been silent for hours, their activity dwindling to nothing. To Krelix, it seemed like the final, pitiful surrender of a species resigned to its fate, but something gnawed at the edges of his mind. The calmness of their captain, the strange confidence in his voice, it didn't sit right. Krelix's claws tapped against the armrest of his chair, a faint rhythm betraying his unease. He had crushed countless enemies, reduced entire civilizations to ash, but something about these humans felt different. And that difference, though small, was enough to set his nerves on edge. As the final minute approached, the Zarian bridge was alive with anticipation. Officers exchanged smug glances, their mandibles clicking with excitement. The humans were out of time. Soon the Pioneer would be obliterated, its ashes scattered across the void as a warning to any who dared defy the Dominion. But then something changed. On the Pioneer, the atmosphere shifted. The quiet resolve of the crew hardened into something sharper, something fierce. Captain Elias Ward, now standing tall at the center of the bridge, let a cold smile cross his face. The time for deception was over. Initiate transformation, Ward commanded, his voice steady, unyielding. Outside, the Pioneer began to change. Panels along its white and blue hull slid away with a smooth, mechanical grace, revealing a sleek black warship beneath. The once harmless exploration vessel was gone, replaced by a predator cloaked in shadow. Its surface shimmered faintly, absorbing the light around it, and rows of advanced weaponry emerged from hidden compartments. The ship seemed to hum with power, its transformation a silent declaration of war. On the Oblivion's claw the Zarian crew froze. Their mocking laughter died in their throats as the Pioneer revealed its true form. The Hivekin officers clicked their mandibles nervously, and the crystalline Nexarans exchanged uneasy glances, their bodies flickering with faint light. Even Admiral Krelix, so confident moments before, felt a chill run through him as he stared at the screen. The communication channel opened, and Captain Ward appeared before the Zarian bridge. But this was no longer the calm, unassuming captain they had mocked. His sharp blue eyes burned with a cold fire, and his voice, though quiet, carried the weight of command. "You thought we were prey," Ward said, his tone cutting through the silence like a blade, "but we've been hunting you this entire time." Krelix's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. "What is this?" he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "What are you playing at, human?" Ward's expression didn't change. "You've grown arrogant, Admiral. You've conquered countless worlds, crushed civilizations under your heel, and believed yourselves untouchable. But you made one fatal mistake. You underestimated us." Before Krelix could respond, the void around the Zarian fleet came alive. One by one, human warships decloaked from the darkness, their sleek black forms materializing like ghosts from the shadows. They were smaller than the Zarian vessels, but faster, more agile. Their surfaces shimmered with advanced stealth technology, and their weapons gleamed with a deadly, cold light. Dozens of them appeared, surrounding the Zarian fleet in a perfect, coordinated formation. On the Zarian bridge, panic erupted. Officers scrambled to their stations, their voices a cacophony of alarm. "Human ships detected," one cried, his mandibles clicking frantically. "They've surrounded us." Krelix rose from his chair, his amber eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he snarled. "How did they?" Ward's voice interrupted him, calm and unrelenting. "You've spent centuries terrorizing the galaxy, Admiral. But you've never faced an enemy like us. We don't run, we don't beg, and we don't break." The human warships moved into position with military precision, their engines silent, their weapons primed. The Zarian fleet, so accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer power, now found themselves outmaneuvered, outflanked, and outmatched. The tables had turned, and the hunters had become the hunted. On the Oblivion's claw Krelix struggled to regain control. "Prepare to fire," he barked, his voice sharp with desperation. "Destroy them all." But even as the Zarian ships powered up their weapons, the human fleet struck. Beams of searing light and bursts of plasma erupted from the darkness, cutting through the Zarian vessels with deadly precision. The smaller, faster human ships darted between the massive Zarian warships, their movements fluid and unpredictable. For every Zarian weapon fired, the humans struck back twice as hard, their advanced technology rendering the Dominion's defenses almost useless. The Zarian crew watched in horror as their fleet began to crumble. Ships that had once been symbols of their unstoppable power now burned brightly in the void, their shattered hulls drifting aimlessly. The humans fought with a ferocity and precision that the Zarian had never encountered, their every move a calculated blow to the Dominion's pride. On the Pioneer, Ward stood at the center of the chaos, his calm demeanor unshaken. He watched the battle unfold on the screen before him, his sharp blue eyes taking in every detail. This was not just a fight, it was a message, a declaration to the galaxy that humanity would not be conquered. Admiral Krelix, Ward said, his voice cutting through the noise of the battle. This is your only warning. Leave this system and never return, or we will finish what we've started. Krelix's face twisted with rage, but beneath the anger there was fear. For the first time in his long career, he was facing an enemy he couldn't intimidate, couldn't crush. The humans had outmaneuvered him, outsmarted him, and now they stood on the brink of victory. As the battle raged on, the Zarian fleet began to retreat, their once mighty warships limping away into the void. The humans didn't pursue them. They didn't need to. The message had been sent loud and clear. And as the Pioneer floated amidst the wreckage of the Zarian fleet, its sleek black hull gleaming in the starlight, one thing became undeniable. Humanity was no longer prey. They were hunters, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again. The void erupted into chaos as the human fleet launched its attack. Their ships moved like shadows, slipping through the darkness with an eerie grace, their sleek forms barely visible against the backdrop of stars. They struck with precision, each blow calculated to exploit the Zarian fleet's weaknesses. Plasma beams and energy bursts tore through shields, slicing into the vulnerable points of Zarian warships. The humans didn't fight with brute force. They fought with strategy, with intelligence, and with the quiet fury of a species that had been underestimated for far too long. On the *** Oblivion's claw ***, the bridge was a storm of panic. Consoles flickered with warning lights, and officers shouted over one another, their voices sharp with fear. The ship trembled under the impact of human weapons, the vibrations rattling through its massive frame. Admiral Krelix gripped the armrest of his command chair, his claws digging into the metal as the realization of his predicament began to sink in. "Report," Krelix barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Shields are failing, Admiral," an officer replied, his mandibles clicking nervously. "We've lost 3 ships already. Their attacks are too precise, we can't counter them." Krelix snarled, his amber eyes narrowing. "Regroup the fleet, form a defensive line, we'll crush them with concentrated fire." But even as the Zarian ships attempted to regroup, the humans were one step ahead. Their ships vanished into the darkness, disappearing from sensors as if swallowed by the void itself. Moments later, they reappeared, striking from unexpected angles, their movements unpredictable and relentless. It was as if the humans could see every move the Zarian fleet made before it happened, their attacks perfectly timed to exploit every misstep. The **Oblivion's claw** shuddered again, the impact of another human strike sending sparks flying across the bridge. Krelix's officers scrambled to stabilize the ship, their movements frantic. The once unshakable confidence of the Zarian crew had crumbled, replaced by a growing sense of dread. And then Ward's voice echoed through the comms, cold and sharp like the edge of a knife. "You've grown arrogant, Krelix," he said, his tone steady and unyielding. "You've spent centuries preying on the weak. You've forgotten how to fight a real enemy." Krelix's claws clenched, his anger boiling over. "You dare to mock me, human?" he snarled. "You are nothing, your species is nothing. We are the Dominion, we are eternal." Ward's reply was calm, almost mocking. Eternal, no, Admiral. You're just a bully who's finally met someone willing to fight back. The human ship struck again, their attacks relentless and devastating. One by one, Zarian warships exploded in brilliant bursts of light, their shields unable to withstand the concentrated fire. The void was filled with the wreckage of the Dominion's once mighty fleet, their shattered hulls drifting aimlessly. And through it all, the humans moved like ghosts, their ships weaving through the chaos with an almost supernatural precision. Krelix's orders grew desperate, his voice a mix of fury and fear. But no matter what he commanded, the humans were always one step ahead, their strategy flawless, their resolve unshaken. The mighty Zarian fleet, so accustomed to crushing its enemies with overwhelming force, was now being dismantled piece by piece. As the battle raged on, Krelix began to realize the horrifying truth. This wasn't just a fight, it was a carefully orchestrated trap, one that the humans had been preparing for years. Every move the Zarian fleet made was anticipated, every tactic countered with ruthless efficiency. It was as if the humans knew the Dominion's playbook inside and out, their strategy tailored to exploit every weakness. On the Oblivion's claw Krelix stared at the battle unfolding before him, his mind racing. How had the humans done this? How had they managed to outmaneuver the greatest military force in the galaxy? And then, Ward's voice came through the comms again, delivering the answer with chilling clarity. "We've been watching you, Krelix," Ward said, his tone calm but laced with an edge of triumph. "Every conquest, every battle, every tactic, you've been teaching us how to destroy you." Krelix's claws tightened around the armrest, his rage barely contained. "You've been spying on us," he hissed. Ward's reply was unrelenting. "Spying? No, Admiral, studying, learning, adapting. You thought humanity was weak, but you gave us the greatest weapon of all, knowledge, and now we're using it to end you." The words hit Krelix like a blow. The humans hadn't just stumbled into this fight, they had planned it, prepared for it, and now they were executing it with surgical precision. The Pioneer had been bait, a lure designed to draw the Zarian fleet into a trap. And the trap wasn't limited to this system. Across the galaxy, other human fleets were launching simultaneous attacks on Zarian strongholds. The Dominion's empire, built on centuries of conquest and oppression, was under siege. The humans had turned the Zarians' own arrogance against them, using their predictable tactics and overconfidence to strike at the heart of their power. "This isn't just a battle," Ward said, his voice carrying the weight of finality. "It's the end of your empire." Krelix's mind raced, his thoughts a whirlwind of anger, fear, and disbelief. The Dominion had faced countless enemies, crushed countless rebellions, but this was different. The humans weren't fighting for survival, they were fighting to destroy, to dismantle the very foundation of the Dominion's power. On the Oblivion's claw the bridge was silent, the crew paralyzed by the realization of their defeat. The mighty Zarian Dominion, so certain of its invincibility, was crumbling under the weight of human ingenuity and determination. And as the battle reached its climax, one truth became clear: humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were rewriting the rules of war, and the galaxy would never be the same. The void was littered with the shattered remains of the Zarian fleet. Once-proud warships, their jagged hulls symbols of dominance and fear, now drifted aimlessly, broken and burning. The faint glow of dying engines flickered like Krelix's chest tightened, his breath shallow. The words felt like a blade twisting in his gut. For centuries, the Zarian Dominion had been untouchable, their power unmatched. And now, in the span of a single battle, it had all crumbled to dust. Desperate, Krelix turned to the comms console. His claws hovered over the controls before slamming down with a force that sent sparks flying. "Open a channel to Zarian Prime," he barked, his voice raw with desperation. "I need to speak with the High Council." The screen flickered to life, revealing the pale, panicked faces of the Zarian leadership. The ornate chamber of the High Council, once a symbol of order and control, was now a scene of chaos. Advisors and generals shouted over one another, their voices a cacophony of fear. The great banners of the Dominion hung limp in the background, their proud insignias now hollow symbols of a fading empire. Krelix, one of the counselors, hissed, his voice trembling, "The humans, they've reached Zarian Prime." The words hit Krelix like a physical blow. His claws gripped the edge of the console, his breathing ragged. "What do you mean they've reached Zarian Prime?" he demanded, his voice rising with panic. "How could they? They've been planning this for years," another counselor interrupted, her voice laced with despair. "They knew our defenses, our weaknesses. Their fleet bypassed our outer systems entirely. They're here, Krelix, they're surrounding the planet as we speak." For a moment, Krelix said nothing. The weight of the situation pressed down on him, suffocating and inescapable. The Dominion, which had ruled the galaxy for 2 millennia, was finished. The High Council's next words sealed its fate. "We have no choice," the lead counselor said, his voice hollow. "We must surrender. Resistance is futile." Krelix's claws dug into the console, his rage and despair boiling over. "You're cowards," he snarled. "We are the Zarian Dominion, we do not surrender." But even as the words left his mouth, Krelix knew they were empty. The humans had outmaneuvered them, outthought them, and now they stood on the brink of victory. The Dominion's reign of terror, its centuries of unchallenged power, was over. For the first time in 2,000 years, the Zarian Dominion was defeated. The silence on the **Oblivion's claw* was suffocating. The bridge crew, once proud and defiant, now sat motionless, their faces etched with defeat. The hum of the ship's damaged systems was the only sound, a faint reminder of their shattered power. Krelix stood at the center of it all, his shoulders slumped, his once fierce gaze now dull and unfocused. He had fought with everything he had, but it hadn't been enough. The humans had won. A sharp chime broke the silence, and the comms screen flickered to life. Admiral Ward's face appeared, his sharp blue eyes filled with a cold determination. His expression was calm, but there was no mistaking the weight of his words. "It's over, Krelix," Ward said, his voice steady and unrelenting. "You thought humanity was weak because we didn't show our strength. But we've been preparing for this moment for years. Your reign of terror ends today." Krelix's claws clenched at his sides, his anger bubbling to the surface. "You think this makes you better than us?" he spat, his voice venomous. "You're no different. You're just another predator waiting to take our place." Ward's gaze didn't waver. "Maybe we are predators," he said, his tone cold as ice. "But we don't prey on the weak, we don't destroy for the sake of power. We fought back because you forced us to. And now the galaxy will be free of your tyranny." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Krelix knew there was no escape, no last-minute victory to be snatched from the jaws of defeat. The Zarian fleet had been decimated, their empire brought to its knees. He had no choice but to surrender. With a heavy heart, Krelix gave the order. "Power down the weapons," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Signal our surrender." The bridge crew hesitated, their eyes wide with disbelief. But there was no defying the inevitable. One by one, the Zarian ships powered down their weapons, their lights dimming as they submitted to the humans' victory. Ward watched in silence, his expression unreadable. The human fleet remained poised, their weapons ready, but they did not fire. They didn't need to. The battle was over and the Zarian Dominion had fallen. As the last Zarian ship went dark, a chilling realization settled over the galaxy. The apex predators, the unchallenged rulers of the stars, had been dethroned. And in their place stood humanity, a species once dismissed as weak, now revealed to be the most